Look at the contrast in that. Look at that cookie, it really stands out. It's the same with the contrast between industrial or corporate America over there and this beautiful green place that we're working in. And contrast is the only way you can show value to your buyers. And there's 3 key places that you need to do that.
So this number here, 60, it comes from Sales Benchmark Index, and you'll understand a bit more about that number in 1 minute, but it's a direct symptom of the fact that most sellers, and I say most sellers, are not using contrast in their sales conversations. So what happens in most sales engagements? You have your buyer's talking to you because they've got a goal they're trying to achieve. They might be hitting that goal right now, but there's maybe a bit of a struggle with how they're currently doing it. What do most sellers do? Well, hopefully you're all doing good discovery. There's loads of posts on LinkedIn about discovery questions and how important they are. But then most sellers start to focus the conversation on the products, the solutions, the services they provide, and all the fantastic benefits that they offer. In fact, David Primer done a fantastic post yesterday where he said that if you look at most websites, it's all about the company's solutions, and it can be really hard to understand what specific problems the company is actually solving for the buyer. So that's one of the problems. It's all focused on you. The second problem is there's no contrast here. Without contrast, then there's no value or no perception of value from your buyer's point of view. So you have to have contrast. Contrast is the thing that gives your buyer momentum and a reason to change what they're doing today. So how do you do that? Well, before you start to talk about the future way, your solution, you really, really have to explore the buyer's current way. And what I mean by that is, how are they currently trying to achieve that goal? And more specifically, what problems, what pain are they experiencing in trying to achieve that goal? And you really have to focus the conversation on that. Not just business pain, but what's the emotional pain that your buyer is feeling with that current way of working. And then, and only then, once you've explored this current way, then you start to talk about that future way. And then you can talk about how your solutions, how your services make that pain disappear. And you have to explain this, both halves of this picture, very clearly, very explicitly to your buyer. That's contrast. And the contrast between the current way and all of that pain and the future way, well, that's the value that you offer. Keenan, in his gap selling, he talks about the gap. This is the gap, and that's the value.
John, we agreed that I do the whiteboard bit. So this number here from Sales Benchmark Index, what they established is that most of the deals today are ending in no decision in the enterprise space. Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because sellers are missing out on another conversation, another story with contrast. Before they go here, they have to frame this entire conversation here to set the context. This story of contrast is about how the world has changed. This is the old world, this is the new world. In the old world, this way of doing things was actually okay. But in the new world, well, there's different threats upon them. There's different opportunities that they're missing out on, and the environment is changed that's making it much more difficult. So if you can tell this story of contrast, which is not about you at all, it doesn't even mention your brand, then you're going to be able to make your buyer realize they're not just bleeding, but they are in fact hemorrhaging, and they may die at any time. And if you can do that, then you can avoid this problem of no decision. Now, the last area of contrast.
Okay, so the third part of contrast, well, it's actually your sellers themselves. If you can show your buyer very clearly these areas of contrast, then you will be contrasting yourself against other salespeople who are purely focusing on this part of the story.